I'm Kurt Dupre, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the newly facelifted Kia Carnival. Now they say car-loving buyers don't like people movers, but clearly Carnival didn't get the brief. It is the absolute dominant force in MPVs with 80% market share in its segment. So while the Carnival didn't necessarily need a facelift to spur on buyer interest, here it is, and you don't have to squint too hard to see that the electric EV9 has been a big influence on what has been a significant restyling. Yes, Kia has sexed up its 8-seater and has claimed to have graduated it from a mere people mover to a grand utility vehicle. Well, we will have to see about that, but I've got to say, Gov has a pretty good ring to it. Now, there's quite a bit to unpack here for this substantial vehicle, so let's dive in. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Now, the Carnival returns in 5 different trim levels, but Kia has decided to shake up the naming structure. So now it kicks off with a base S version, which escalates up through Sport, Sport Plus, this GT line light version, and a flagship GT line. Each of those trim levels can be had in a choice of 2 different engines. One is a 3.5 litre naturally aspirated V6 petrol engine, which is a carryover from the old Carnival, and the other is the 2.2 litre turbo diesel, which is also a carryover from the old version. And then there's the much anticipated 1.6 litre turbo petrol hybrid version that is coming in this new generation, but more on that a bit later. So there are 10 different flavours underpinned by 2 different powertrains that have served Carnival very well thus far. The range kicks off at $50,150 for the petrol S version, and you're going to need more than $20,000 to scale up to the ultimate GT line version. Meanwhile, the diesel powertrain commands a $2,200 premium no matter which trim grade you decide to choose. At $68,580, this GT line light diesel version is about $4.5 grand more affordable than the ultimate GT line flagship. So let's see what Kia's done on the outside and delve a little into the differences between GT line and GT line light. To my eyes, designers have done a really good job here refreshing the Carnival to give that real EV9 electric kind of aesthetic. It does look conspicuously different and quite a bit more modern than the pre-facelifted version, even though it's only really remodeled the front and rear ends. All versions with GT line in their name get these really neat new 19-inch wheels with this sort of square theme that's clearly pinched from Kia's electric models. It's available in 7 different colours, including this really neat blue-grey finish, which is $695 extra. At over 5.1 metres long and almost 2 metres wide, it is a large rig, though I think this restyling does make it look quite tidy and lean. The full-fat GT line gets what's called small cube projector LED headlights. However, this version gets the same LED headlights that's featured elsewhere in the range. But outside of that, both the GT line and the GT line light are absolute dead ringers. So both versions get skid plates, door handles, and sill garnish in satin chrome, and both get dual sliding sunroofs where the front section can actually tilt. Of course, because it is a people mover, you get conventional front doors and powered sliding rear doors. Plus, in these high-spec versions, you get a powered tailgate to get access to the 3-row interior. So that's where we're going to head next. The interior is largely similar to the pre-facelift, save for a couple of key areas. And the big news is that the Carnival now gets this huge curved dual 12.3-inch display that was supposed to come to the range quite some time ago. That is, you do get this large display if you get the grades from the Sport Plus up. The other grades do get a 12.3-inch media system, but they do get a smaller 4-inch digital display instead. The new system looks a treat, and it gets neat pinch, zoom and swipe functionality. On these higher grades, it's also fully featured, so you do get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, an excellent 360-degree camera system, blind spot view monitoring through the driver's side of the screen, natural voice recognition and proprietary sat-nav, and 10 years of mapping updates. On top of that, the Carnival also gets over-the-air software updates. So the latest system allows owners to do some pretty nifty stuff via their mobile phone, like preheating or pre-cooling the car, unlocking it remotely, viewing the car via the 360-degree camera system, or even remotely parking it. In terms of cabin features, what does separate the GT line from the GT line light? Well, what you don't get in this example is you don't get digital rear view mirror, you don't get the full color head-up display, you don't get paddle shifters, or the rotary transmission controller, although for my taste, I much prefer this conventional method. You also lose the U-Butte 12-speaker Bose surround sound system, but for my money, a lot of those trinkets aren't strictly necessary, and I would be pocketing the $4.5 grand saving by sticking with this light version. Another key change is the HVAC system controls, which is a lot simpler and now features dual dials for the dual zone up front. You can also control the separate single zone for the rear occupants either through the front control panel or through a separate panel that's located just behind the driver's head. The cabin is fully ventilated through all 3 rows with vents in the ceiling. Like the pre-facelift, it's spacious and roomy, and the outward visibility here is absolutely excellent. Both the GT Line and GT Line Light come exclusively in this black and taupe colour scheme, which does bring a bit of colour to the cabin without it looking too gauche. There is a bit of hard plastics about, but it is balanced out fairly nicely by some soft touch textures and double stitching on the dash and on the door trims. Big cup holders, huge console bin, big cubby for your phones, lots of storage. There's really not a lot to complain about in here. So it's a shame they didn't upgrade some of the seat trim for the ultimate GT Line and GT Line Light versions. Splurge all the way to the top of the tree, and you do get heated and ventilated front seats and seat heating for the outboard positions in row 2. Of course, you get powered sliding doors to access this extremely spacious second row. So tons of knee room, excellent headroom, particularly with this glass roof, and a nice flat floor. However, I do think it could do with a little bit more under thigh support. What's really cool is that the outboard positions are their own bucket seats, so you get their own slide and tilt adjustment. And you can stow the middle position to sort of reveal this nice big tray and a couple of extra cup holders for the rear occupants. And it makes for a pretty fetching 6-litre. And it's full of really smart little features. So you get USB power in the side of the front seats, and if you stump up for the GT Line, you actually get electric power remote for the front passenger seat. Elsewhere, we've got a nice convenient 12-volt outlet. We've got manual rear blinds and the aforementioned 3rd zone climate control. And the sliding of the 3rd row bench allows you to balance up knee room between all 3 rows. So let's check out row 3 and see how it goes. Once you get in, it's surprisingly roomy in here. Now, it's one of the few vehicles on the market that offers 3-row adult accommodation and actually really means it. Now, there are 3 seatbelts across the back here, and it would be a bit of a squeeze, but this is genuinely a 7 adult proposition for comfort for long trips. Nor is it low rent accommodation in here, because rear occupants still get rear air vents, window blinds, cup holders, and USB-C ports. But how does all this impact boot space? Let's find out. To demonstrate just how brilliantly packaged the Carnival is, with all 3 rows of seating in place, you still get a whopping 627 litres of boot space. But what's really clever is that it can stow flat right into the floor, which does liberate 2,827 litres as a 5-seater. So none of the packaging and spaciousness has necessarily changed, but it already gets an excellent 11 out of 10. But how's it drive? That's where we're going to go next. The base engine is a 3.5 litre V6 petrol that outputs 216 kilowatts and 355 newton meters. It is the Carryover Smart Stream unit from the pre-facelifted version, and it's backed by an 8-speed automatic driving the front wheels. And I got a chance to drive it a bunch at the local launch of this facelift, and it's perfectly fine. But it does seem to work pretty hard. That does bear out in fuel consumption. For combined driving, it tends to hover just under the 10-litre mark, which isn't too great, particularly that's only me on board with minimum luggage. Load the Carnival up full of loved ones and luggage, and surely that fuel consumption will skyrocket, although it will run on cheapy 91 octane fuel. But the real pick of the conventional powertrain choice is the diesel, which we've got here. It is a $2,200 upcharge over the petrol version on every single variant, although it is available all the way throughout the range. Driven on exactly the same road loops as the petrol, it returned a much more frugal 7 litre per 100 consumption. But where it really shines is muscle, and it doles out 440 newton meters and has really solid shove, despite the fact that it only outputs 148 kilowatts. The big news in Carnival land is that it's finally available with a turbocharged petrol hybrid powertrain. But there are a few buts. The first but is that it is only available on the flagship GT Line version, and at over $76,000 before on-roads, it's absolutely the most expensive Carnival you can buy. So why only one variant? Well, apparently all the hybrids for global consumption come out of one factory, so supply is very limited. And in fact, Kia Australia says that they will only be getting 60 units per month for the first year. Then there are outputs, 132 kilowatts, 265 newton meters from the little 1.6 litre Turbo 4. Meanwhile, the electric engine outputs just 54 kilowatts and 304 Newton meters. That's a total of 180 kilowatts and 366 Newton meters combined for the turbo petrol hybrid. And those figures aren't that much more glorious than the base V6 petrol engine. But in terms of fuel economy, the claim is 5.8 litres combined. But around town, it's only 4.2 litres per 100. And that's only 1/3 of what the 3.5 litre V6 drinks. And it is a case of, we'll see. Now, Kia Australia didn't have any hybrids at the local launch of the Carnival facelift, so we're going to have to wait until we get it through the garage to see if those claims are actually genuine. Where Kia Australia claims that the Carnival is most improved is in ride and handling, because what the old pre-facelift version had is what Kia called the last of the COVID suspension tunes. And that's Kia's words, not mine. So back down when there was shutdown, there was hardly any chance for Kia to get out and develop the suspension for the pre-facelifted Carnival. But now they've put in the hard yards, and I've got to say, the results are pretty impressive. It's not that the old Carnival was a bad drive, but it was just prone to a loose steering and a pronounced bump in the rear end that was really noticeable when you're in the third row, and it was loaded up with loved ones and luggage. So this time around, Kia really put the hard yards into the ride and handling R&D. They completely revamped the steering. They put much firmer springs up the front end for crisper handling, and they also added frequency dependent dampening, which is a tech that has been already rolled out across other Kia model lines. And the result is good. It's very good, but it feels more like the suspension's been finessed rather than some real night and day improvement, but it is better nonetheless. So you do notice that it is generally more settled around town and on a highway. The steering is a lot crisper, and it does tend to roll noticeably less, particularly across the front axle, when you point it through corners. As a result, it feels like a smaller vehicle. It's easy to hustle, and it's easy to place on road. Load it up, and there is still a little bit of that bounce in the rear end, but in general, it is very settled and quite comfortable. In terms of active safety, the Carnival is loaded with features, particularly on the higher grades, and does behave itself generally quite well most of the time. You still need to turn the overspeed warning system off every single time you start up the car, but thankfully, there's no driver attention monitoring or camera system in this car, as is mandated in Europe. Why? Well, it's not sold in Europe. But if there is still one constant annoyance, it's that you still get the incessant school zone and speed camera warning, even though you're not overspeeding. So overall, it's gremlin free, comfortable, quiet, and has perfect manners for running around the family. Of course, the Carnival is covered by Kia's excellent 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty. Servicing is every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres for both the petrol and the diesel versions, but the turbo hybrid will be capped at just 10,000 kilometres per visit. People mover, MPV, Gov, call it what you will, but Carnival really is one of those rare models on the motoring landscape that is both a critical and a commercial success. In fact, according to Kia, because of supply restraints, there are still 2,000 unfulfilled orders coming into this new facelift. However, Kia does promise that the wait for this new facelifted version is only between 2 and 3 months. It's really of no surprise that Kia haven't meddled with the formula of the Carnival. So outside of the new look, the new tech, and a bit of a price rise to match that, there aren't a lot of real surprises. But this new facelift takes an already likeable rig and really polishes it around the edges, making it that much more appealing. It's not perfect, but if you're after a real grand family hauling tourer, it's really easy to recommend. For my money, I'd roughly pocket that $4.5 grand savings and go for the light version rather than the full fat GT line. But I'm inclined to think that the variants do get sweeter the further down the ladder you go. That's because no matter what trim level that you choose, you do get the same excellent packaging, the identical powertrain spec, and the same upgraded suspension. We also think that the diesel really is the pick of the powertrain. So with that, you just simply choose the trim level according to your budget. The jury is out on the new turbo hybrid, but we're really keen to get that one through the Chasing Cars garage very soon. So that's what I think, but how about you? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.